will keep moving forward then. And I think Patrice and Bernie have a few follow-ups about this meeting. So let me unmute Patrice and Bernie, and you guys should be ready to go.
Thank you very much. Patrice is also on at the end of these sessions. We do like to have a chance to share and debrief. Just a couple opening comments though. We have to be grateful to all the presenters. This was a new venture for many of us. I will say, oddly enough, this was the biggest registered grouping that we've had in the CT Energy Network that Clean Water Fund has worked on for 10 years. So I suspect that many of you are really impassioned by this mission that we're on. You're very dedicated, and at least a few of us are probably tired of watching reruns of Gilligan's Island and figured this was the next best thing. A big thank you to the groups that you see on this slide, in particular, Liv Green, Daphne, Kelsey, and Andrea, who did a wonderful job. I learned a lot watching you navigate Zoom. I think that's going to be a new skill in this world that we're living in. So thank you so much for that. I think we do want to recap, and I think the chat is open, and I think at some point we'll unmute everyone. When we do, we'll do our best between Patrice and myself to gather comments. Two things though. First, we had an event previously in February on net zero schools. This is the second quarterly event. We're planning something in June. We have to leave it at that. Something, it may be live, it may be virtual. We may send letters to each other. We don't know yet. But give us your ideas for what the next gathering should focus on. I think more than ever, it's important for this group to focus and share and make things happen. As Daphne said at the beginning, we may be stuck sheltering in place, but that doesn't mean we can't make progress. And as soon as we get done sheltering, we're going to come out ready to change the world. I would offer this sort of framework for comments, and is that think of something that you are going to do as a result of this presentation. And in my mind, I have two particular things that I'm going to do. First thing is I'm going to find a way to either get my town of West Hartford down to see Daphne in Fairfield, or to get her from Fairfield up to my town. And also, the second thing I'm going to do as a result of this is we have a pedestrian and bicycle commission that we are just now beginning to work with. I'm on the Clean Energy Commission. So we need to talk more. And I think we need to talk more with Gannon. I think there's a lot of connections that I'm starting to see can and should be made. And because I often forget what I've said I'm going to do, I'm going to write to Daphne and tell her the promise that I make. And I'm going to write to Gannon Long. So as all of you think of what you're going to do, I suggest you find a buddy and make sure you share your promise so that buddy will keep you on track. And with that, if anybody has comments or suggestions, anything they want to share with the group, I think, are you all unmuted now? I think you can be unmuted.
I think what we're going to do is I think we wanted to make sure Patrice didn't have any final comments.
Yes.
And then if he does or doesn't, then Andrea was going to unmute the lines and let us know that the doors will be open till around 2 o'clock for dialogue. And so I think that's how it's going to work. So we'll see if Patrice, are you with us? And did you want to say a few words?
I would love to say a few words, but there's some background noise, so I'll just let things go ahead. But I just wanted to thank everybody for their time today. It's been great to get to know so many new people, and I look forward to working with you again in June and in between. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Patrice and Bernie, for those wrap ups. So I will go ahead and unmute everyone. So feel free to make comments or and just start having a conversation with each other. We'll see how if it needs to be moderated at all. So now everyone should be unmuted. You can also mute yourself if you like.
So perhaps, if Bernie wants to start with the moderation, I don't know if you can see everybody, if somebody has a question or something you want to say, that you can, raise your hand like this and we can, like Mary, it looks like Mary has a question.
Well, I just wanted to reiterate something that Gannon had said that I think is so important, that if we could all react to climate change the way we're reacting now to COVID, just think what we could do. If we could even just do a little bit of that reaction, just think what we could do. And I think that that's such a valid statement to make. I was having a discussion with one of the legislators about the bottle bill, and I was getting pushback that it was such a lifestyle change to go from 5 to 10 cents deposit. And I want to go back to him and say, let's talk about lifestyle change now. 5 to 10 cents? Come on, really? Yeah. So a little lifestyle change, not a lot. This is like extreme. We just want a little lifestyle change. We can do it. We can make things happen. So I think we need to find a way to not have to be too extreme, but we can do this stuff. We can make changes. It doesn't have to be this hard.
Mary, this is Patrice. A friend of mine in New York said that climate change needs COVID's public relations agency.
Tony.
I kind of want to echo some things, and the bottle bill is a great example, and we mentioned a couple of the presenters mentioned equity issues, and when you think about things like the bottle bill, you have to think beyond the very, very minor inconvenience or lifestyle change. I can't believe somebody called it a lifestyle change that the bottle bill would have, and think about the equity impacts of people who collect cans and bottles, especially with the unemployment we're going to be seeing in our city. Including more bottles in the bottle bill both cleans up our environment and increases, marginal income for some folks that are going to be unemployed, and every little bit will help. The other thing you mentioned at the end was that this is the largest gathering of this group. And we were seeing that across the organizing and web meetings and teleconferences that we've been doing. And I think it's very important to, while, empathetically and strongly responding to the COVID pandemic, not stop there and think beyond that pandemic to a sustainable future. And folks really want to help make that happen. So I'm glad that this meeting is another example of that.
You're onto something, Tony. I think when this is over, we won't go back to exactly where we were when we entered into this. This is, I think, going to be an inflection point. And I think with people like the folks on this call, we can make that inflection point aim in the right direction. We're having, as somebody said before, the effect right now is planetary. You can see a drop in nitric oxide. You're starting to see a stabilization in carbon dioxide, believe it or not, which I've been tracking. So this is, I don't want COVID to win. It won't win, but we should learn that this is showing us that what our actions, graphically showing us what our actions are doing to the earth.
Mm-hmm. Well, I had something else I just wanted to share with the group. That the last meeting that you discussed, I announced that I had a youth group in Fairfield, and did anyone have anybody? So thankfully, some people did connect me with some other kids, and on March 6th, the last time the legislature was having public hearings, I went up to the LOB with 11 kids, second through junior and high school. They all testified. So I have the video that I can share with you from CTN. They were amazing. They all picked, we somehow got the agenda a week in advance for the environment committee, and then one kid spoke at the education committee about the climate change education bill. They all picked what they wanted to talk about. They all did their own research. They all wrote their own testimony. They all projected their own personalities. They were amazing. It was, it's too bad that the session, probably isn't going to continue because they would have probably had an amazing impact on how those bills would have gone. But thank you guys for, passing that along to everybody. They really, it was great. We're still trying to keep them connected virtually too.
Bernie, this is Gene.
Hey, Gene.
I'm curious about back on buses right at the moment. There have been various types of electric buses. Some older cities like Boston and San Francisco have had electric buses for 50 years or more. They use an overhead wire system, which you could argue is not too attractive to look at. But the buses are much cheaper since they have 0 batteries. And those batteries are expensive. The big transit buses that have the long range batteries, 400 kilowatt hours or more, are twice the cost of a diesel bus. So there's an intermediate model that a big European electric supplier has developed, ABB. They have a system that charges the bus en route, because buses stop every 2 blocks and they have to wait to discharge and pick up passengers. They have an overhead device that charges the bus while it's stopped. Now, I had the impression from the Paul Hoag's discussion that infrastructure is very expensive. Yeah. I've heard that they can use repurposed electric vehicle batteries to store that energy and dump it into the bus rapidly. And I suppose all those batteries are becoming available. But there are interesting trade-offs here of a very expensive bus with a big battery or a low-cost bus with no battery and overhead wires. Between is a bus with a small battery that stops and recharges every few blocks or maybe every stops. I'd be interested if anybody has studied what's more beneficial and what does it work better in some instances and not so good in others.
I'll just pick up on what Daphne said at the top of this session. Is we shouldn't invent everything here. We should learn, and this is an option I'd never heard of. But I think I wouldn't be surprised if Live Green can sort of contact that European city and ABB, and we can do a side by side.
ACA Brown Boveri, ABB, has developed that system. Maybe others are working on it too. They're a big electrical equipment manufacturer.
Yeah.
I just wonder, what's the applicability of that? Is it?
Well, I know the Proterra buses, transit buses, can charge at the bus stops along the way. That may be an option that they chose not to get in Bridgeport. Maybe it's too expensive, but I know that technology is in the Proterra bus.
So as you add stops that can charge, the battery size goes way down. Yeah. Maybe you put 100 kilowatt hour battery in there.
And when it comes to the school buses, again, it's a case-by-case situation. So you have to look at where the buses are parked. You have to look at the situation at hand. ABB is a great company, so maybe we need to talk with them and see, where they are with electric school buses, see how they work with the service providers. So again, it all starts with you and your town. If you want to have electric school buses in your town, Let's have a conversation. Let's go look at where your school buses are parked. Let's talk with your public works person. Let's see what works for your town. There's so many technology choices. There's so many options, but everything is really specific to each town. And we want to work together with each town's stakeholders to see what's the best solution. But ABB, it's a great company. And, you know, so another great resource, and that we just really want to make it local. Who's going to be the champion in that town to work through that process to make sure all the stakeholders are on board with that.
This is I just want to throw out a question for discussion now, or for you to get back to any of us. As Bernie mentioned, we're looking to have these events quarterly, so we're already teeing one up for June. We are discussing a couple of different topics, but if anybody has anything that you would like to have us cover, we're open to suggestions still. So for the June or for any future meeting.
Peter?
I just wanted to say something to Daphne, but before that, Jean, I think that when you mentioned Boston and San Francisco, those are very dense cities. And in Connecticut, which is a few places that are that dense, a few, you know, Hartford, New Haven, and Bridgeport, that might be applicable. But for most of Connecticut, I don't think that what you're talking about is applicable. The infrastructure cost wouldn't match up well with the density. Daphne, on your presentation, I thought it was terrific. And I think that what you've done in putting together this, in a sense, like a toolkit for understanding and advocating for electric school buses is very good. So we don't each have to reinvent the wheel. And so I'm just trying to decide, you know, how to allocate my time for the next few months. It may be with this. One thing in favor of it is that I know that our school board is actually kind of interested in this. Mm-hmm. So you might as well push a rock downhill than uphill. But I think it's also because you've done the hard work of putting together a kit of information and a way of communicating with somebody who knows more than somebody getting started would. I feel confident to reach out to try and find somebody in my town of Mansfield to take this project on, to become the project manager here and then connect in with you if it's not me who does that. Yeah. So I think that's just a really good thing that you've done.
Thank you. It's a lot of fun. I love school buses. It's a lot of fun. I live right around the corner from a grammar school, and every day the diesel bus goes by and I think, oh no, we need to make that quiet. So I'm motivated every day, except for these days, but most days I'm motivated by the sound of that diesel bus. I just don't want to hear.
When our town was doing sustainable CT, I was thinking about electrification of town vehicles and just making it easier for the public to charge when they're in places that are not along the I-84 corridor where we have a lot of chargers. And I thought about school buses, and I was thinking, could we structure our school bus contracts kind of like the renewable portfolio standard, in that, you know, maybe we say next year we want 2 electric school buses in the fleet, and the year after that it's going to be 4, and then 8, and we're going to increase the percentage of electric school buses in our fleet, and the providers can see that, they can plan for it, and they can bid on it, and that was my thinking about school buses.
And that's actually
I'm going
what
to
we're
jump
doing.
in here.
In Fairfield, that is what we're doing. We're trying to do 2 per year for 5 years.
School buses are such an interesting application too, because they have this early morning period where they're very busy, and then they have an in-between period between the homebound trips when they can recharge the bus. I'm presuming that that's the way it works, but that occurred to me. Not every electric vehicle has that option.
So I'm going to jump in here if you can hear me. Just that we're going to be closing up in about 5 minutes. So just a 5-minute warning.
I just wanted to amplify the equity benefit of electric school buses, particularly in our biggest cities, and how much busing and diesel exhaust our students are exposed to, both from standing outside the bus and riding on the buses for extended periods of time. And I think it's got to somehow get worked into the contractual requirements and the milestone metrics that those contracts are awarded by, because right now the contracted firms have no incentive to adopt electric school buses, so they don't.
Tony, the idea of factoring in all the co-benefits, because right now, as Doug Holcomb said, the economics are challenging. You have to get grant money to make the difference. But I can almost guarantee you that if you took the reduction in particulate matter at 2.5 microns and 10 microns and translated that into reduced asthma and the associated cost, it would make up a lot of that, if not more than that difference. So co-benefits.
Yeah, can you think of a worse idea than exposing school-age children to diesel exhaust? So we send them on these dirty buses.
Yeah, may I add to the idea of the trolley buses that obviously you've seen in Europe. I would also like to suggest the idea of replaceable battery packs, because if you have standard battery packs, you can dump them, charge them off-site, and then put them right back into the car, into the bus, without having to tie up the resource. So you have a lot more use out of the resource.
This is freaky.
I think that's a great idea.
One of the things that Scott's presentation, because he makes those pretty accessible, he talked a lot about the particulate matter and the fact that the fumes go up the back of the bus into the bus. So it's not just waiting outside the bus. The fumes are going into the bus. Yeah. And those health benefits are so important. So, we should make sure Scott's okay with sharing his PowerPoints that he's been going around that state doing.
Absolutely.
Is that part of your toolkit?
Another problem I've noticed at schools, they often have a parent pickup lane. And when I've been on my walks, I see parents parked there with their cars idling. Yep. It's law, and it's not very good for the children either.
Well, we are actually working on a no idle program. I think Kelsey is actually leading that up, where we are making sure that all the schools have no idle signs, and it's such an important piece of this. So there's electric buses, but there's also, stopping the idling, doing what we can right now. So thank you, Kelsey, for your work on that.
And idling, that came up in our GC3 transportation section. There is a no idling law. There just is next to zero enforcement. And without enforcement, the law is pretty much non-existent. It's not being applied.
Right.
I asked our DPW director to put up signs at our local school's parent parking lane.
So we actually do have signs. We're working with DEEP, and we do have no idle signs. So if any of you would like a complimentary no idle sign that has I know it's not enforced, but it does have the code on there, let us know, and we can deliver one to you, or put it on a bus and send it to you, some kind of environmentally friendly way.
You can also just take a potato and put it in the tailpipe, and that will take care of the problem.
Yeah.
So I think we have time for one more comment, if anyone has anything to close out with.
I'll just endorse Bernie for president based upon his last comment.
Aim higher, Charles. Aim higher.
All right. Well, I think this has been it's been beautiful to see all of you, all your faces, and I just want to thank everybody.
Thank you, Daphne.
Thanks
Thank you, Daphne.
Water Fund. Thank you so much from the Clean Water Fund.
And let's just all put our hands up and say thank you and goodbye.
Thanks, Daphne.
Right, Tony, thank you so much for your help.
Have a great day. Wash your hands.
Wash-
Bye.
Daphne and everyone.
Bye-bye, and thank you all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
Pam.